Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm a useful idiot. Welcome, and let's go global and talk about the idea that the global real estate bubble is bursting. And what we mean by when we talk about a global real estate bubble is there's a number of notable areas of the world that missed the last real estate collapse and the global collapse in 2007. But that doesn't mean they don't have a lot of the same problems. The timing is just different, and each scenario is a little different. We've seen that in the Eurozone as well, places like Spain where there was a huge real estate collapse. The same thing in Ireland. But there's also the fact that a lot of places where the real estate's been reinflated, surprisingly enough. And I think a lot of us out there watching this all along since the last crash are really surprised at how much the real estate bubble's been reinflated. I know I live here in Washington State, and the Seattle real estate market was very resilient in the last crash, although there was some damage in the area. But prices have rebounded considerably, although and haven't quite reached their peak. But it kind of depends. Once again, a lot of high-end property in desirable neighborhoods in Seattle proper, the prices get jacked up because the Silicon Valley doesn't pay as much as Seattle does for the same kind of people, so they come up here and drive the prices up. But anyway, we have bubbles. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because Reggie Middleton, who I respect, came out with a video and talked about the fact that the global real estate bubble is popping. And he points out developments in New York City and places like Harlem where the prices are just starting to plummet. And I remember earlier this year, in line with Brexit, as well as other factors, just foreign investment, the London real estate market was starting to turn around a little bit. And then there's threats that because of the result of Brexit, real estate will take some major hits, and predictions of up to 30%. But we'll see about that. But anyway, we've had some big crashes in real estate prices recently in two bubble markets. One is Singapore, one is Vancouver. And in those two markets, one reason why there's been this recent collapse is because they put new restrictions on foreign buyers, and that's where a lot of the real estate investors come from in Singapore and Vancouver. Vancouver, of course, is notorious for having a lot of Chinese investors. So this really nipped it in the bud, and within a few months, sales in Vancouver plummeted 25%. And so we also know that they're what they're calling the biggest real estate bubble in global history is unfolding in China. And of course, we know all the worst economic calamities are bubbling under the surface in China, but one of them certainly is real estate. And something to be worried about, because in the United States we only have 10 cities with over 1 million people. In China, there's over 160 cities with over 1 million people and that much real estate. Those kind of bubble. We're talking about a serious bubble, and the prices are really out of control. They have been for quite some time, but recently in Shenzhen, China, prices are up 60% since just 2 years ago, up 35% in Shanghai. And so those are really remarkable price increases. And we've seen the same thing in places like Vancouver and Toronto. 400 square foot condo in Vancouver is now $500,000. So just amazing prices. And so there's been talk about this housing bubble collapsing in Canada for some time. Once again, I talk about some of these places. The real estate bubble is essentially concentrated in a couple of large urban areas. That's true of Canada and Australia, Sydney, Australia, Vancouver, and Toronto, Canada. And so what we find is that it's not necessarily there's going to be a huge bubble spread all over the whole country, but then of course if there's a real estate collapse, of course the effects are going to ripple through all real estate eventually. So that's why everybody needs to be concerned, even though they may not be living in those main cities proper. So anyway, we have the market in San Francisco also contracting now. So when you have some of these major U.S. markets that have been really high anyway, and all these areas that have reinflated, then you have potential for this bubble and this potential bubble to pop. And the same thing with these amazing leaps and bounds, exponential growth in real estate prices in places like London, New York, and places like here in Seattle, but China and Canada and Australia. And so we're going to see potential for a bubble. I'm not so sure. When you look at the overall figures, for example, supplied by the IMF and their global housing index, and prices are 23% above what they were in 2000. So that seems like in this era, that doesn't seem like that bad a growth. But of course, that's spread out over the entire real estate spectrum worldwide, and doesn't necessarily compensate for the fact that you have six to 10 cities around the globe that have just outrageous real estate problems. But like I say, those handful of cities can have a huge effect when that amount of real estate goes bad and those loans go bad, and the banks have more non-performing loans on their books. And then you get into commercial real estate, and it's a whole other problem. Look at places like the United States and Britain, where there's a huge brick and mortar retail contraction, and a lot of that commercial real estate, the damage there is being hidden for the time being, but you have those twin thrusts of commercial real estate and a residential real estate going bad. Then once again we end up with these problems. So but the big picture that shows that we could have a housing bubble that is bursting again is because there is no question that housing bubbles are existing in all these places, and a lot of it's caused by all this easy money from the central banking system worldwide for the last at least 6-7 years. But it goes back to 1996 is when the real estate bubble began to be blown in a lot of these places. And between 1996 and 2007, when the last real estate collapse happened, prices increased 130%, but the decline was only 30%. So that's something to keep in mind, that there's a lot of my discussions with some of my friends, specifically Jeff Dowdy. We've talked about the fact that houses got to go back down to where people can actually afford them. Otherwise, these bubbles will continue to be bubbles, and we'll need to deflate some more. Although I tend to believe that a lot of these urban areas are going to be permanently high. It's just baked in the cake. They're desirable, and that kind of real estate will continue to go up, and there is a wealthy base that can afford to live there. So, but anyway, that's something I thought that was interesting. 1996 to 2007, those 10 years, prices increased 130%, but only declined 30%. So there's room for another collapse in real estate prices, and there well should be, because as everything in the financial economic system, the fundamentals are just kind of rotten right now, and we've got a lot of subprime lending going on around the globe to facilitate these bubbles. Certainly China is a great example of that. Australia is another great example of that, where household debt is at huge levels in order to get in this real estate boom. And then certainly in the United States, we have the government contributing again with the Fannie and Freddie and the FHA under Mel Watt, once again offering subprime loans and 3% and below, and once again with lots of bad underwriting. So anyway, there very well could be a global real estate collapse going on, another event that's going on economically in the world that could add to all the other calamity going on, and it may or may not be happening. I tend to be skeptical of these crashes now, because we've been on crash watch for years, and they've come up with so many and amazing and exotic ways to keep this rotten ship afloat that I can't underestimate what they're capable of hiding. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.